Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing well out there today. In a previous video, we did kind of an unboxing and first impressions of the ZimaBoard that folks over at ZimaBoard sent me. And that is this guy right here. And in this video, I want to take just a closer look at the device, kind of its background, the team behind it, and also talk about what my plans are for this board. And then hopefully I'll also get a bit of input from you guys. So before we get into all of that though, let's take just a quick moment to pay some bills with today's video sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Linode, the largest independent cloud computing provider. If you don't want to, or can't for whatever reason, self-host applications the way we talk about on this channel, Linode provides virtual servers that make it easy and affordable for you to host anything in the cloud. You can set up any of the applications that they have available in their marketplace with just a few clicks, or you can set up your own Docker VPS and install basically whatever you'd like in a Docker container. They have load balancers and firewalls available to help keep your apps online and safe. If you run into any trouble getting set up, Linode comes with amazing 24/7 customer support by phone or ticket, along with hundreds of guides and tutorials to help you get started. Sign up today at linode.com/dvtech and get a $100 60-day credit on your new Linode account. Links are in the description. So before we get into like the specs of the board and the plans with the board and that sort of thing, I actually want to talk about the team behind the board. And so if we jump over here to my desktop, the ZimaBoard website has a page about their team. And just to kind of run through this a little bit, the founder is Lauren Pan. He's been doing this for more than a decade now and has not only founded this, but also IceWhale, kind of the overarching company behind ZimaBoard and CasaOS. He's got a marketing manager by the name of Alan Shen, and he was actually part of the team that helped with the Latte Panda project. They've actually in fact, this is the Latte Panda that DF Robot sent me a couple of years ago, actually. And it turns out that some of the team from Latte Panda, these guys right here, are also some of the same team for ZimaBoard. So ZimaBoard isn't a new novelty item for them. This is something that they have been doing for a while now. Again, this is Alan talking about with marketing and that sort of thing. Their project manager, we've got John Guan. I've actually talked to him a little bit as well, and he is a full stack software developer and hardware engineer. That's a hell of a combination to be. We've also got a software developer with Jerry Liu here, as well as Kelvin Sun. And he was actually also a product manager for Latte Panda. So you can see that there's definitely been a bit of a shift from Latte Panda over here to ZimaBoard. So again, this isn't a fly-by-night kind of thing. This isn't something that a couple of guys got together and just decided, I'm going to do something out of the ordinary. This is something that they've been doing and decided to go a different way with. Now, in order to get funding to make this project happen, of course, they did what a lot of companies do, and they went through Kickstarter. And if we actually jump over here to the Kickstarter page, here we can see that there were 1,880 backers. They managed to do, I think, just a little over 4,000 times or 4,000% of what their goal was. And they managed, obviously, to way surpass what they were expecting. And as a result, there are a lot of people who are getting these boards, and that's why I wanted to be part of this community, is that I think it will be a very tight-knit community of like-minded individuals who have all got kind of a common theme, a common goal in mind, and that is to do more self-hosting. And that's kind of what the folks with ZimaBoard wanted to do, was actually put the power of self-hosting back in the hands of the average consumer. So as I mentioned in that previous video, I originally found out about ZimaBoard through, I think it was a Facebook ad that had shown up in my timeline. It was either Facebook or Twitter. It was a social media ad anyway, where I first originally found out about ZimaBoard, and I immediately just reached out to them like, hey, I want to be a part of this. And then a while later, I got an email saying that CasaOS was associated with ZimaBoard. I'd never heard of CasaOS, but as soon as I saw it, I knew that I really wanted to take a look at that, and that's kind of where those CasaOS videos came into play. And you know, of course, I've been doing that series on a Raspberry Pi 4. I believe it's a 4 or an 8 gig model there, and of course, then I kind of got to know the guys behind the project, and of course, as per the last video, they were awesome awesome enough to actually send me an engineering sample that was the 832 model, which means 8 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of storage. So I think that's a really good actually transition over here to actually talk about the product itself. And we'll kind of go through just some of the overall specs, and then we're actually going to take a look at the board that I have here in my hand. We're gonna dig into this just a little bit here shortly. So if we scroll down, of course, you can still pre-order these right now. If we scroll down, you can see that they've been featured in all kinds of different places, from Geeky Gadgets, Hackster.io, Tech Radar, Product Hunt, Make Use Of. So if we keep scrolling down, we can see that it is a low-cost single-board server designed for makers, geeks like you and me. That's what we're here for, right? It has both expandability of an x86 single-board computer and the appropriate power of a micro server. And we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. I really need to fix that so that camera doesn't jiggle when I put my arms on the desk. Anywho, so it will support up to 36 terabytes of hard drive space. That's a lot. That's actually quite a bit. We can also run things like OpenWRT or pfSense. We can run VPNs on this. We can do all kinds of things to actually secure our incoming traffic, whether we use this as a router or a VPN, or we use this as a Docker server, and we allow traffic to come into this. We can also put all kinds of stuff on here. Again, this is an x86 platform, so think Intel. Well, it is an Intel board, or an Intel chip rather. We're going to get to that. But this is a full-fledged x86 desktop style computer with a low-powered 6-watt TDP Intel processor on it. So if we scroll down a little bit further, we've got two 1 gig LAN ports and a mini display port that offers up to 4K 60 hertz at 100 megabits per second. Now I've seen some different numbers on that. I believe that the 4K 60 hertz is on Windows. However, 4K 30 hertz is still possible on Linux. So that's just something that I don't know, all of the information is here, but I believe I saw that somewhere else. So like it says here, it is 100% tinker friendly. And what I dig about this that really sets it apart from the Latte Panda is that it has a PCIe 4x or X by 4 interface. So that means basically any type of 4x slot that is PCI Express, you can plug into this and get that functionality. Whereas this, you're kind of limited. So I really dig that they've got that available. And of course, it says it's open source and always will be. So that's kind of the highlights here. If we scroll down a little further, we kind of covered all of this as far as personal cloud, hardware router, Plex media server. Now the catch to that is that it will really only transcode up to 1080p. So don't think that you're going to get a 4K server out of this. Again, it is a low-powered Celeron processor. I believe it's Celeron. We'll get to that. But just know that you're not going to get 4K transcoding with this. It isn't meant for that. Of course, if you wanted to do that, you'd want to get some sort of a GPU to plug in, or possibly go a completely different route entirely, to be completely honest. So of course, file sharing, collaboration, personal server, industry/embedded projects, that's all fine. Let's actually talk about the hardware here. Here we go. This is actually where I saw it. So 4,900% of their target goal on Kickstarter. I knew it was quite a bit. So anyway, we scroll down. Of course, here we can see, they're rendering here of the board. But that's not what we're here for. What we want to do here is talk about the specs. So it comes pre-installed with Linux. After having been in their Discord a little bit, I believe that because I've got an engineering sample, I've got a different Linux distribution than other people got when they received their boards. Mine came with a desktop operating system of Debian 11. And so I'm not sure if everybody's getting that. That's just what I got. However, I am going to replace that later on in another video. Of course, it does say that compatible OSs are Linux, Windows, OpenWRT, pfSense, Android, and LibreELEC. Below that, we've got 3 different models of this board available that you can pre-order at this time. So there's the ZimaBoard 216, 432, and 832. Again, I've got the 832. That's what they were nice enough to send me. So those are the specs that we're going to talk about specifically in this video. Now, it does come with the Intel Celeron processor with the Apollo Lake. This is an N3450 with 4 cores. No hyper-threading on that. That's something to keep in mind as well. 4 cores, like I said, 1.1 gigahertz base frequency with a burst of 2.2 and a 2 meg L2 cache. It also has integrated HD graphics. That's the Intel HD Graphics 500 with a 200 megahertz base frequency that boosts to 700 megahertz. Again, this is the 8 gig model, but they all are 3200 megahertz LPDDR4 dual channels. So whether you get the 2, the 4, or the 8 gig, you are going to get the performance benefits of dual channel memory rather than just single channel. So I really appreciate that they did that. One thing I did notice, and I may have to talk to them about this or something, mine is only registering at 1600 megahertz. So that's a setting I may need to change or take a look at in my BIOS or UEFI, whatever. But again, I did get the 8 gig model here. So for onboard storage, we do have the eMMC 5.1 standard and 32 gigs of onboard storage for that. I'm probably not even going to use that, to be completely honest. I don't like having. It's fine for certain things, just not what I'm going to do with this. I've actually got a couple of different drives that I plan on using for this upcoming project series thing. But just know that it does come with onboard storage, so you don't have to add additional storage if you don't want to. Also, like I mentioned earlier, this Intel Celeron 3450 has a 6 watt TDP, so it uses very, very little power. So I really do appreciate that. If we scroll down a little further, we got some additional features here. The cooling is passive. I really dig the cooling on this thing. The heat fins that they've got, it looks great. The branding with the colors. Overall, I'm super, super happy with how this thing looks. We've got, security, or we've got virtualization available. Again, mine said that it wasn't available, so I'm gonna have to do some checking in my BIOS. It's got AES and I for security, transcoding rather. As I mentioned, 1080p. So again, you're not gonna get a 4K transcoder out of this, but you should be able to handle 1080p with H.264 or H.265 with the HVANC coder within, of course, MPEG-2 and VC1. So what I'd actually like to do now is kind of take it apart. And kind of talk about some of the things that are going on in here. Okay, so this is, like I said, the ZimaBoard. This is, of course, what it looks like on the front. And again, I love the colors here. I love the fin design. So you can have a passively cooled device here. Over here on the side, of course, there's nothing there. This gap is my fault. We're gonna cover that here in just a minute. So I really do love the look of this. However, you'll notice it is super, super fingerprinty. So that's unfortunate, especially since there's a good chance that this side will always be down. You'll never see it. I would have maybe liked to have seen some feet or something here. But anyway, let's take this thing apart. So we're gonna take some screws out. All right, so there is the bottom here. It does come in a few different pieces. Hopefully I'll find that. There we go. So it's got a couple of plastic pieces. You can kind of see through that. There is the base, and then of course there's this area right here, and that's really it. That is mostly just taking the whole thing apart there, and then if I just pop this, oops. Oh, I lied. There are 2 screws. One here, maybe. There we go. Yeah, one here and one here. So let's get those out. And then once we've got that, it just kind of peels apart like so. Now these pads were not in here. These are, I did that. These pads are too thick, and I've got more on the way. These actually, let's get rid of all of those, toss all that over there. So let's take a look at the heatsink first. Here you can see where there's actual pads that will make contact with each of the different chips. So we've got one for the CPU, one for storage, and then 2 for RAM or memory, and then we've got some different things over here as well. And then of course, I mean that's it, but it is aluminum. You can hear that. So that is the heatsink. Okay, so here is the board itself. It looks actually, in my opinion, really, really good. So over here we've got a couple of RAM modules, or N3450. And then over here we've got our 32 gigs of onboard storage, our PCI Express, of course, then all of our I/O here as well. And that's really it. On the back, of course, we get an RTC battery that we can swap out. Also a fan header. I actually kind of appreciate that there's a fan header on there. If you want to use that, tie into that, you absolutely could. Looks like we've got an option for a breakout here. I mean, maybe that is for testing and QA, I'm not sure. But that's basically what the board looks like. So when I first got it, the CPU had had thermal paste on it. Of course, I wanted to clean that off and swap it out for a thermal pad. However, these are 2 millimeters thick. I've got some more on the way. I think I've got some conductinaut that's on its way tomorrow, as well as some thermal pads. So I'm going to put the conductinaut here. I'm going to put thermal pads on all of the major chips. And I went with the 15 by 15 by 0.5 millimeter pads so that we don't get the bowing that we saw earlier when I put all of this back together. But this is the board. It's simple and it's elegant, and I think it looks great. But I wanted to kind of show that to you just so you get an idea of what the inside of it looks like, so you don't have to take yours apart if you don't want to. Okay, so since we talked about the server itself as far as what we're going to use, let's talk about the storage that we're going to put on this thing. The first thing, this is going to be our boot drive. At least this is going to be my boot drive. This is just a Sabrent enclosure, but if I open this up, hopefully this will focus. We have a Silicon Power M.2 PCIe Gen 3 SSD. This is 256 gigs. And so basically this is going to connect via USB-C here. Of course, it'll plug to the USB-A port on the device, but this is going to be our boot drive. I didn't want to use this card with that drive because at the moment I don't have any place to mount this whole thing where it might not get messed up. I wanted something that would be a bit more resilient than just having this free floating. So I decided to go with this enclosure. And so this is what we're going to use for the boot drive. And then conveniently, this is also, I believe, a Sabrent enclosure. It is. This one uses USB-A to USB-A. But this is the Kioxia Exceria drive that they sent over. This is 480 gigs, so 256 for the OS and downloads and stuff like that, and then 480 for our data. So let's talk about what we're going to put on the server and these drives. Okay, so we've talked about the server itself. We've talked about the team behind the server. We've talked about the storage that we're going to use on this server. And so now let's talk about what my plans are for this setup. I'm actually planning on doing a few different series with this device because there's so many different things that we can do. So the first thing that I want to do is actually do an OpenMedia Vault 6 home server setup. And we're going to go from installing OpenMedia Vault 6 and getting Portainers set up and ready to go. We're going to do things like get backups set up immediately. We're going to get a couple of different ways to access this server remotely, whether it's through Zero Tier or Nginx Proxy Manager. In the Nginx Proxy Manager setup, we're also going to set up Cloudflare with fail to ban so that we are making sure that we're being as secure as we possibly can. We're going to try to use some more best security practices as we go through this series in order to not open ourselves up to any kind of problems later on. We'll also look at setting up a dashboard so that we can have kind of a repository of links to all of our different containers that isn't Portainer. Portainer is great for managing Docker containers, but it's not great for figuring out where things are necessarily. So we're going to set up a dashboard. We may look at a couple of different dashboards based on your guys' recommendations. So my goal with this is to actually set up a functional home server rather than just throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at you. Doing some stuff to make sure that we're safe, we're protected, we can access things remotely, and be productive all at the same time on one single device. Now, you won't necessarily have to have a ZimaBoard to follow along with this. This won't be hardware specific. However, everything that I will be talking about in this OpenMedia Vault 6 series will be x86 specific. We're not going to touch on anything with Raspberry Pi. Now, that's not to say that some of the containers that we'll be installing may absolutely be cross-compatible with the ARM platform as well as the x86/64 platform. So just know that my focus with this series is going to be x86. However, there may be some crossover into the ARM territory. So we've talked about a lot in this video. It's a very long video, and thank you if you've made it this far. You rock, seriously. But we've talked about the hardware. We've talked about the team behind the hardware. We've talked about the storage that we're going to use. We've talked about the software we're going to use. We've talked about some of the containers that we're going to install in a vague sort of way. I've got to keep you guys coming back for more, right? So before I wrap all this up, there's a couple of things I want to just throw in here, and I promise I'll be done. I'll shut up. So the first thing is thank you to ZimaBoard for sending this over. This is amazing. It's so cool to be a part of the product launch and that sort of thing, and being able to share that with you guys. I really do appreciate ZimaBoard for sending this over. I also want to thank today's video sponsor. You guys are helping me pay the bills. Thank you very much. Also, patrons, thank you. Again, you guys are amazing and also helping me pay bills to keep the content coming. It really does mean the world to me, whether you've been a patron, for a week or a month or a year. Thank you. It really does help more than you might realize. Also, with being a patron, you'll get early access to my content when that's available. Now that I have the new studio, I'm able to release more content. Let me rephrase that. I'm able to record more content ahead of time, get it prepped, get it put on Patreon, and then release it on my set Tuesdays and Thursdays and occasionally Saturdays. So if you want early access to my content, whether it's just early access or you want project files when I'm doing CasaOS stuff, Patreon is definitely the way to do that. And I want to thank, again, my patrons for your continued support. I think that was it. I think that's all the stuff I wanted to get out before I wrap this up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And as always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support. And I'll talk to you in the next video.